Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Senior Climate Activist panel. My name is Kristen Anderson. I'm the branch manager of Ideas for Us, and we've got an awesome panel tonight with some amazing activists here with me today. And we're going to talk about how we feel about the climate crisis and some solutions and things that you can do to get involved. But before I introduce our amazing panelists, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Ideas for Us in case you aren't familiar with us. So we are a global environmental nonprofit, and we work to develop, fund, and scale solutions that solve the world's most pressing environmental and social challenges. And we're able to do this by educating, engaging, and mobilizing volunteers in eco-action. We educate our community through our monthly Hive meetings, where we bring in an expert on a topic of sustainability, and then they do a presentation and then ask the community, how can we solve this global problem with a local solution? Then we take those ideas that were bounced around at the Hive and we turn them into eco-action projects. So every month we also implement a climate solution in our community based on the needs identified in the Hive meeting. And so this happens every single month. And usually we have multiple educational events just like this and multiple eco-action projects. And we focus on a different pillar of sustainability every month: energy, water, food, waste, and ecology, and align all of our projects with the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And so these eco-action projects can take so many different forms, from shoreline projects, urban agriculture, to waste audits, to tree plantings. And since it is Earth Month this month, we have a little bit of everything going on. So definitely check out our Facebook events page at Ideas for Us Orlando. We have at least 7 eco-action projects to get involved with. But today we're super excited to have our panelists here with me. Our first one, I'll go ahead and let him introduce himself, is Mr. Dave Finnegan. Unmute yourself, please. There you go.
Great to be here. I'm a longtime climate activist, and before I was a climate activist, I was a population activist. Worked in Korea, Taiwan, Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, back in the 1960s and 70s, helping people reduce fertility with the idea that we had to have the planet and the people in balance. Well, we got folks in most of those countries to go from an average of 6 kids down to 1.6. But as soon as that happened, they entered the modern world and they began to consume more and produce more. And so if you look at Korea as an example, the average per capita income when I got there in 1966 was $800 a year. And now, although they haven't grown that much in terms of population, the average per capita income is $35,000 a year. So they went from one of the least polluting countries to one of the most polluting countries thanks to what we did. So my conscience bothered me, and I decided I better get on the other side of the equation and start working on helping people to reduce their carbon footprint as much as I had helped them to reduce their family size. So that's what motivated me to get working. And I went to the Al Gore training in 2007 and have been working in the field ever since. That's me. I'm Dave Finnegan.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And now I'll hand it over to Frances Stewart.
Hi, thank you. I wanted to tell you a little bit about a project that I'm working on, probably the most, collaboration between Elders Climate Action, that you'll hear more about ECA from Geri, but our collaboration with the Environmental Voter Project. If there's one thing most of us have learned in the last several years, it's that elections matter. They matter a lot. And you would think that would mean that people who care about the environment would vote a lot. Actually, the opposite is true. If you look at people who say that environment or climate is one of their top 2 priorities, as a group, we vote 10 to 20% less than other voters in the United States. That's a big problem. In 2014, for the midterm elections, over 15 million environmentalists did not vote. And these are people who are registered voters who could have voted. In 2016, it wasn't quite as bad. It was only 10 million people. You can imagine how different the world might be right now if those 10 million people had come out to vote. It's a huge problem. It's also a huge opportunity, because it's a lot easier to get people to come out to vote than to get them to care about the environment and the climate, or to know what to do about that. The Environmental Voter Project started in 2016 to tackle that problem. And basically what they do is they identify people who care deeply about the environment but who don't consistently vote, and then work to get them to vote in each and every election so that voting becomes a habit. In 2017, our Massachusetts chapter, Elders Climate Action, got involved in that, as did a number of other members in the country like me from Maryland. And in 2018, we made it a nationwide project. And we work every year, every election. State and local elections are important themselves, but they also build the habit of voting. And they're easy times to work with voters because they're not as crazy and frenetic as, say, a presidential election. So you might wonder what the impact of that is and what we've been able to do. There are thousands of volunteers who work for the Environmental Voter Project, making phone calls to voters and sending texts to voters, which is really the core of how we do our voter contact. And also in years that don't have COVID, going door to door and canvassing. But unfortunately, we weren't able to do that in 2020. But in 2020, Elders Promote the Vote, our Elders Climate Action Project, had 260 volunteers. Now with those 260 people, we sent over 6 million texts and made almost 14,000 phone calls. As part of that effort that really did increase turnout in the 12 states that the Environmental Voter Project was working in. You can see the impact over time. Over the 5 years since Environmental Voter Project started, 730,000 voters who care deeply about the environment have become what they call super voters, people who will vote consistently in every election. And that makes a huge difference in how politicians look at the environment and how they make their decisions on many different things. And also who gets elected. We don't tell anyone who to vote for or what to vote for. We figure that the voters we contact are smart and they care, and they can find that out in many different ways, including the work of many other groups. We just want to get them to the polls. And you can really see the impact, particularly in the Georgia runoff. Before the Georgia runoff even started, we already had over almost 67,000 super voters in Georgia from the work that EVP had done there in the previous 4 years. And we made thousands of calls, sent thousands of texts, and were able to target almost 400,000 voters and increase their turnout compared to other similar voters by about 1%. Now, that may not sound like much, but when you look at how close the margins are in these elections, that really is huge. This year, we're going to continue to work in those 12 states. We've added 5 more, including some big states, geographically like Alaska, and population-wise and geographically like Texas. So we certainly can use more people to help us contact voters and help them become super voters. So I hope I'll get a chance to work with some of you.
Amazing, thank you. Geri Friedman, I'll hand it over to you to introduce yourself.
Great, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Geri Friedman. I'm an elder, a grandmother, and currently I'm co-chair of Elders Climate Action, which is a project of a nonprofit called Elders Action Network. Elders Climate Action was born in 2014 from the passion, the wisdom, and the energy of a few elders who got together and recognized the scope of the crises that our country was facing. And one person at that meeting stood up and said, I'm going to create a movement of elders taking action on climate change. And so he did. I joined Elders Climate Action late in 2014, and I've been co-chair since 2015. And we are, for the most part, a volunteer-driven organization, only one staff person. And I'm drawn to this because I know we need to leave a habitable planet for our grandchildren and all future generations. We are a national organization and mobilizing elders to take action on climate change. And we currently have about 15,000 followers, consisting of elders and others. We mobilize elders through a variety of strategies, one of which is creating chapters in geographic areas. And in fact, we have a chapter in Florida with 2 pods, 2 teams, one in North Florida, one in South Florida, South and Southwest. who are very active. In addition, we work with many other environmental organizations. We're part of a network of over 200 climate and environmental organizations. And over the past years, we've focused heavily on intergenerational collaborations, and we've supported the Future Coalition's events in 2020. We've participated heavily in shoe strikes, and we encourage our elders to educate their legislators on the importance of sound policy that's based both in science and equity. And we don't support any policies that are not equitable. ECA provides the tools for advocacy through a variety of strategies. We have letter writing campaigns. You heard from Francis about our environmental elders promote the vote through the Environmental Voter Project. We can enable elders to send letters directly to their legislators. Recently, we were able to provide a very significant comment to the U.S. Postal Service on their recent failures in awarding a contract for a very huge contract for over 100,000 new mail delivery vehicles without doing a proper environmental impact study. And we have ECA members who prepared the comments, and they were endorsed by more than a dozen national environmental organizations. We communicate through newsletters, bulletins, and a variety of other capacities. We're not a science-based organization, although we're very fortunate to have many science experts among us, and they're able to look at policy and say whether it's a sound policy for us to support. I would guess we have in our leadership probably over 200 years of science expertise in that group. And I'm going to turn it back over to Kristen.
Great, thank you so much. All right, now I'll hand it over to Jeff Haverly. You can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, Chris. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Kristen, and thank you, Geri. I'm an engineer, retired. I grew up in the Adirondack Mountains of upstate New York. Got a big appreciation for the environment and the climate, and I saw early on the effects of coal power plants and what they were doing to the forests in the Adirondack Mountains. I graduated from Maritime College as a marine engineer. Also had my license to sail as an engineer on merchant ships across the oceans. And I did that for 5 years and got a bigger appreciation for the oceans and the state of the environment at that time, back in the 70s and 80s, and loved it. And then going to other countries and seeing how they were living, visiting countries like Indonesia and Singapore and Tunisia and Israel and many, many others, going through the Suez Canal a number of times. And then through my engineering career, I did work with fossil and nuclear power. And nearing retirement, I got an appreciation for what did I want to do with my life in retirement. And it all came together, and I looked for the best venue that fit for me and how I wanted to share my beliefs and my strong concern for what was happening to the environment and the climate, and learning it over time, witnessing it in my experiences, so that I had the opportunity to join Elders Climate Action. And living out here in the heartland, I live in Indiana. There wasn't a chapter at the time, so we started a chapter, and we're looking forward to starting chapters throughout the country. We've got about 12 chapters across the nation right now, and I currently lead I represent all the chapters at our coordinating council which leads Elders Climate Action. And I help them start up and get started in various states. And we've got a strong chapter in Florida already with Maxine Lobel. And we're always looking for more people to help us out. But we're committed to the climate action and whatever fits and whatever works in a particular state, as well as supporting federal programs, state programs, local and municipal initiatives to just inspire and recruit more and more elders, and then elders with youngsters and children, all ages, to work for improving the climate and addressing climate change. Thank you.
Incredible. Thank you so much. All right, and now I'll hand it over to Kay Hudson. Hold on, you didn't unmute yet. There you go.
Okay. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you for having us here today and gathering us together. I'm sure we have a lot that we can learn from each other. I know I personally have a lot to learn every single day. I come from just being an outdoors person. I didn't really get started in activism and ever really until maybe 10 years ago. My life has been about being outside, camping, fishing, hiking, and enjoying the beauty of our country and our environment and loving it and sharing it with children, and not my children because I don't have any children, but with other people's children, and trying to spread the appreciation for the outdoor world, and hope with the knowledge that if people don't know something, they don't appreciate it, they won't protect it. So it's been my idea to do the best that I could in my own little world to introduce children and young people to the environment so that they would come along and protect it, because Lord knows it needs protection. and as I got older, and I was always an activist when it came time for voting. I've never missed an election, and I've been a real ardent campaigner. But to see so little change occur with elections, so little change occurs, it has made me, especially, I mean, here in Florida, it seems to be a downward spiral. It has made me want to push harder to make a change, because it does seem like we have an opportunity. Well, before we even had an opportunity, this does seem to be a pivotal time where it's either a now or never sort of situation. And if I can't do something proactive to try to protect the world for future citizens, for future generations, then I won't know who would. I don't know who would do it if I don't do it. So I don't feel like I have any excuse but to do the best that I can. So I joined the League of Women Voters in 2013, not because of environmental issues, but because I'm an avid voter. And I joined the Natural Resources Committee at that time. And I find that, you know, the League of Women Voters is known for its voting activism, but also they take studied positions on lots of different topics. One of those topics is the environment, natural resources. Now, natural resources covers a lot of territory. It can be conservation lands, the state of the water in Florida, the sustainability of recycling and composting and the like. And then there's energy, and there's just an awful lot of work to be done. But here we are at this time where as the chairman of the Natural Resources Committee, when I am trying to prioritize what we're going to try to accomplish, it just is like a beacon out there that says we have got to do something right now about climate crisis. And we have effort, we have energy, we have people, we have credibility, and again, if it's not us, who is it going to be? So I have changed the focus of our Natural Resources Committee to climate crisis. We're just seeing most everything comes back to climate crisis, and I see us working with other organizations in Central Florida. We, of course, the League of Women Voters is a national organization, but the Orange County chapter is the largest or second largest in the country. We have a great reputation for having credible research and considered opinions about things. So we're in a good position to be able to work with other organizations and to coalesce energy. And that's where we're headed. And that's what I'm trying to do. And I send that back to you, Kristen.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's really inspiring to see that all of you have identified this need in our planet and are putting in so much energy into, solving this in your own ways. So it really is amazing. So we're going to get into questions now. So audience, please put your questions in the comments. We're going to let everybody have a minute or so to answer each question. But our first question today is, what concerns you most about the climate crisis and climate change? And I will start first with Frances.
Thanks, Kristen. I think the thing that concerns me the most is that without taking effective action on climate change, all the other good things that we do in so many important areas are really at jeopardy. That we can make lots of advances in alleviating poverty and expanding human rights and all sorts of really important areas. And if we have the kind of climate problems that scientists tell us we will have, not in that terribly distant future, we're already starting to see, if we stay on this current trajectory, all those gains may be literally washed away. But it also gives us the opportunity, if we do things in a smart way, to solve a lot of problems at the same time, to take actions that will increase equity, that will decrease poverty, that will improve health, that will do lots of really good things while they improve the climate. So it's not an either or.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Geri, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Kristen. My biggest concern and the thing that keeps me awake at night is that according to the latest IPCC report, we have until 2050 to reduce emissions by 100%. We need to be at 50% reduction by 2030. So now it's 2021. We have less than 9 years until 2030, and we have no meaningful legislation that's going to move us towards that goal. So it's upon us to advocate for policies that are necessary to get there. And not only must the legislative action be at the federal level, it needs to be the state and local levels, as well as global cooperation. And individuals have to take action too. There's always people will say that, reducing your carbon footprint is not insignificant to the scope of the problem, which individually it well may be, but when individual actions are taken by large numbers of people, it will in fact have a huge impact. There isn't a silver bullet. We have to take a lot of approaches, but the ticking clock is what really concerns me. Thank you.
Absolutely. Individual action is absolutely essential, and that's pretty much why we're all here today too. Jeff?
Yeah, following up on what Geri said, to me, while we now see the effects of climate change every day, without real action, it is an existential threat. And yet we see failure of 50% of the voters to believe in science, as evidenced through the last administration, the false narratives, the COVID pandemic, and vaccines. So we've got a lot of work to do to help educate everybody, because it's going to be a very hard sell, but that's why we need everybody doing all they can.
Amen to that. Kay, I'll hand it over to you. Unmute, please. You're good.
Gee, I'm sorry. It's the little children that worry me and that concern me for climate change. And it's actually seeing the little children and knowing that that little boy who lives next door to me, who's 2 years old and loves to play in the garden, is going to suffer for unless we become responsible for his long-term environment. And it distresses me no end. And I'm so sorry when I see the profit takes the interest over the good of the world. And that's very disturbing to me. But then I do have hope when companies like GM decide that they're going to get out of the gasoline propelled automobiles. That's cause for hope, and that's a market driven choice. And if more and more large corporations take on the responsibility for both their profits and the results of their actions on the climate, even without the government doing what the government should do, if market demands it and ingenuity is encouraged, then maybe we can all see a better light at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely. It's up to the corporate and to the individuals.
Even if the government doesn't do what it's supposed to do. But I have to also say one more thing, and that is that we do have the opportunity right now to have some hope for our government.
Absolutely. 100%. And I'll hand it over to Dave.
Well, I want to help Kay because I'm working only with kids and young families. My work is to go into elementary schools and get the kids and the teachers and the parents excited about going green. We do that in a very structured way. It's a one-day program. We start with the teachers meeting in the morning, and then we get the kids a grade level at a time, and they get to learn about a local critter. And they don't learn academically, they learn by becoming that critter. So they become monarch butterflies, or they become frogs, or they become manatees, or Florida panthers, or black bears. And they learn by doing, they see slides, they sing songs, they get excited about the environment. That afternoon, at the end of the school day, we hold our all-school assembly. And I say, or the presenter says, kindergarten, what'd you study? And they say, monarch butterflies. And then I say, do monarchs have a problem? And they say, yes. And I say, what's the problem? And they say, people. I say, first grade, what'd you study? They say, frogs. I say, do frogs have a problem? They say, yes. I say, what's the problem? They say, people. Well, we do that all the way up through the grades. It could be K through 8. And then I say, well, if people are the problem, then people have to be the solution. So come tonight to family night. You can't come alone. Make sure you bring your grown-ups with you. When families come to family night, we give them a copy of the Green Actioneers workbook. The Green Actioneers workbook you might think of as drawdown for families. It's over 100 actions that families can take. And on every 2-page spread, we've got the kids page, which is a coloring book and a word search or a rebus. And on the parents page, we've got English and Spanish. And this is all backed up by our website that we think is going to be the Wikipedia of green action for households. Because when people go to the web page, they'll find very in-depth articles on each of the things that are in the book. So families can use the book. The kids can get excited. They say, Mom, I colored this page. Let's do this one. And some of the things are free. Many are free. Many save money for families, and a few are expensive. So then we go through the book at family night. And then at the end of family night, they take the book home and get to work. We've got an agreement now with a new branch of scouting. Most people haven't heard of it. It's called Navigator Scouts. And Navigator Scouts is a real scouting organization. It's inclusive. Girls, boys, doesn't matter what your religion is, doesn't matter if you believe in God or not. Unlike Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, it's inclusive. So Navigator Scouts has agreed that when we go to a school and get the kids and the parents excited about going green, they will start a chapter in that school. And then the kids and parents can get together and keep working their way through the Green Actioneers workbook under the umbrella of Navigator Scouts. So that's how the program's going to roll out. We've been on hiatus. We did schools in Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Maryland, and Colorado before the COVID crisis. But since the COVID crisis hit, we haven't been able to have our family nights in schools. But once we're able to go back into schools, then we're going to start the family nights again. And that's when this program is really going to take off. And there are three ways you can get it started. One is you can have Dave Finnegan come in. That's very expensive and it costs a lot of carbon. Another is you can have somebody I trained come in. And the third is somebody from the school can get a copy of the book, and it explains how to do the program right in the book. And they can do the program right in their own school. So my job, self-assigned, is to get families to get to work and go step by step to going green. And as was mentioned previously, why bother with families? Why do individuals have to do this? Well, every one of those moms or dads works somewhere in a company or for the government. And so they'll be putting pressure on their company or on the government to make changes. Every change that's ever happened in society has come about because of what came down from the top and what went up from the bottom. And right now, most of everything that's being done in climate change is coming from the top, from business, from industry, and from government. What we want to do is answer it with an echo from the bottom, with families going, we get it, we're part of the solution. So Green Actioneers is the organization, and I'm eager for people to come to Green Actioneers and sign up and get on our mailing list and get a copy of the Green Actioneers workbook. This is a draft. The actual book will come out in September, but these are available and you can get them at greenactioneers.com. So love to have people work with us because we're going to change the world.
Awesome. Do you want to answer the question as well?
Oh, what concerns me most about climate change is that we've got to get more people involved. And
Yes.
the negative part of this has driven me and other people crazy. The fact that it's all about how bad it is, how terrible it's going to be if we do everything wrong. And I say, here's how great it can be when we do everything right. So let's work on the positive side. Let's get off of the negativity. Let's not talk about polar bears dying. Let's talk about monarch butterflies living.
Absolutely. That's a great answer. Solution oriented. That's what we're all about. All right, moving on to the next question. Why do you choose to organize others and lead your groups? What inspired you to do this, and why do you do this? We're going to start with Geri.
Thanks, Kristen. Why do I choose to lead others and organize? Once I had some time after I retired, I knew I wanted to do something that I was passionate about. My biggest passion is clearly the environment. And I wanted to be able to engage others and really make a difference. So, following up from what Dave just said, that, there's policy that comes down from the top, and then there's the grassroots that bubble up. And the grassroots that bubble up and that stand up and step up are able to really influence policy. We've seen it. We've seen it in the civil rights movement, the LGBTQ movement, farm workers, unions, in the environmental movement. The first Earth Day influenced the creation of the EPA, and that's produced landmark policy and has made a huge difference in the air quality that we have. So really enabling people and encouraging people at the grassroots level to let them know that they have the power. That's where the power really is, and it needs to bubble up as well as policy moving back down. So that's why I choose. Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you. All right, Jeff.
Hi, thank you, Kristen. Why do I choose to organize others and lead your groups? Well, we must change. As elders, we've seen change. This change has happened. We've seen the winters change, the storms, and the temperature changes through our lives. And we've grown through our experience, gained wisdom through our lives. And it's us elders that we now want to influence other elders as well as youth, all people, to share our stories, to help educate and just get everybody active and seeing the solutions that we have to address. We see how we must change, not just for us. We're getting older and we won't see the results of our actions, but we are doing it for our children and our grandchildren and future generations. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Kay.
See how I learn? Well, I'll tell you, the reason why I've chosen to, I don't know that I actually organize others, but because I adopted an organization with the League of Women Voters, and they're already strong. So I haven't had to actually organize. But I have found that activism works. And it helps to have other people working with you. And the more people you have working with you, the louder your voice is, then the more you can seem to get done. Because there's an inertia, that you get going and people come with you. And then your voice gets louder, and then things can actually change and you can make progress. Progress is a long, slow slog, but it does happen, and I've seen it happen. So I get really encouraged when I see progress happen because of activities that I've participated in. And here in Orlando, I actually got really involved with leadership here when after my husband passed away, and I had time, and I said, well, what am I going to do now? And now it seems like this is what I'm doing. I'm dedicating myself, and boy, do I have so much to learn. I have so much to learn because I've been primarily a recreational outdoors person that merely appreciates the world. And I have a lot of science to learn about and a lot of legal stuff that needs to be understood too with the government. And so there's an awful lot to learn, and I am absolutely immersed in it now. And here in Orange County, my first year as chair of this committee, we had two opportunities on our Orange County charter. How many of us are from Orange County? Myself, Kristen, are you? Yes. Dave, are you? Are you from Orange County?
I'm in Osceola County, but I'm a longtime League of Women Voters member. in
Oh,
Orange
okay.
County.
I thought your name was familiar to me. That's why I wanted to know. Well, we had these two charter amendments on our ballot in November. One was, there were three actually, but two of them were environmental. One was actually giving the rights of nature to the Wekiva River. And then the other one was telling Orange County Board of Commissioners that they could not put a road through a conservation land called Split Oak Forest. And oh my gosh, we really rallied the troops. We were out on the street corners. We were pounding pavement, knocking on doors when nobody else was doing that, because we had COVID-19 kept all the politicians off the doorsteps. We people who were working for these environmental charter amendments were unfazed. We got out there and got out the vote, and we won those elections by 89% for the rights of nature to protect the Wekiva River, and 86% on saving Split Oak from a toll road going through it. That is the result of activism, and it's incredibly encouraging. It makes me want to do more. It's hard to get that kind of great opportunity when it's not an election year, but it was very, very rewarding. And that's why I do it, because it feels so good.
Absolutely. Organizing definitely works. And that's a great example of how it did locally here recently. So thank you. And now, Dave, I'll hand it over to you.
Well, my history leads me to this. Having worked, as I mentioned at the beginning, in family planning programs in East Asia, where we created a movement among women, starting at the village level, to reduce fertility. We didn't talk to them about population growth. We didn't even talk about family planning. What we talked about was how to have a happy family, have 2 kids and raise them well. Girls are as good as boys. Well, that was a real slap in the face to the Korean culture, because in Korea, girls weren't as good as boys, but now they are. So this movement started because we went to the village and got women involved. We had 2,800 village workers who were going from door to door, getting women, young women particularly, who had only 1 or no children, getting them on board the program. The culture changed. Now, if you ask a Korean, would you rather have a girl or a boy? They say, it doesn't matter. Whatever I get is okay with me. That's a huge cultural change. The second cultural change I was involved in seems trivial, but it really taught me a lot. And that is, I wrote a book, and it was called The Joy of Juggling. Nobody had ever written a book on juggling before, a good one. And this book really taught you how to juggle. And I started going around teaching juggling in schools, because I thought it was important for kids to learn for a lot of reasons. We called the program Juggling for Success. It was all about success. And then I wrote a big book called The Complete Juggler, 575 pages teaching juggling. I sold over 1 million copies of these books before the internet existed. And I sold the rights to these books in German, French, Italian, Dutch, Portuguese, Spanish, and a couple of other languages, and they're bootleg copies available in Chinese. So that's part of my history. I've started 2 movements. One movement was reducing fertility in Korea, Taiwan, and to a certain extent in Thailand and Indonesia, and starting a program in schools that went worldwide. If you go to Germany or any other country and you say, do you know how to juggle? And they say, yes. And if they're of an age, in other words, 30 or above, how did you learn? They'll say, oh, Dave Finnigan taught me, even though I never met them. So I know movements work. And movements that start in schools particularly work, especially if you can get the kids and the parents working together. We're harnessing the 2 most powerful forces in the universe, the love of parents for their young children, and the powerful nagging ability of those kids to get their parents to do what it is that they want them to do. So we're creating a whole generation of Greta Thunbergs. Watch out, here they come.
Yes, absolutely. And Francis, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Kristen. During my professional career, I had a lot of great opportunities to, teach medical students and physicians, to develop new programs, to help write federal policies, to lead various different sorts of teams. And when I said, okay, enough of that, I'm going to retire and do something different. Like, okay, what is it that I'm going to do? Obviously, there were things I cared a great deal about, particularly about climate. But I decided the thing to do was kind of explore and see what was out there, what was a fit for me, how I could, use that background and those skills. And that's, led me into various things with Elders Climate Action and Climate Reality. And I'm still exploring, seeing where those things are going to go.
Awesome. Thank you. And the next question is, what do you think is missing from the sustainability or the climate movement? And I will start with Jeff.
Thank you, Kristen. Yeah, we as elders and Elders Climate Action, we help educate are working on to educate our members, and they reach out to their communities to highlight the important things that brings everything into reality and into their consciousness. Regarding what's missing in the sustainability movement, I think it's the need to for people to realize that the population growth issue. It's now at 7.8 billion inhabitants, right, across the globe. 6.1 billion is what it was in 2000, so you can see the rate is increasing. And when I was born, it was 3 billion. And we have the same one Earth and what we're doing to this Earth. If everyone lived as we do in the USA, we would need 4.1 Earths. And we don't have it, right? So we encourage everybody to calculate their ecological footprint. I did, and here I sit, and I've got solar panels. My wife and I drive Priuses, and we watch our electricity usage, and we're not totally vegan, but we're working on it. And my Earth Overshoot Day calculated was March 14th. That means that if I continue just with all these things that I'm doing, I've used up my part of the planet that is entitled to me by March 14th. So I'm already working on everybody else's leftover Earth from all the poorer countries that don't use up their resources. And it would take 4.8 Earths to, if everybody lived as I do. And I think I'm doing a lot of the good things. Same with carbon footprint. I've calculated my carbon footprint, and I can share these links to calculate your own carbon footprint. Estimated my footprint is 20,000 pounds of carbon per year. The average is 40,000 pounds of carbon per year. And so I went into a carbon neutral Indiana organization that, so I actually pay $31 a month in carbon offset costs, so I can claim that I'm carbon neutral. So we have to do our part to do those types of things. And we at Elders Climate Action help everybody do those things.
Wow, that's amazing. I would love for you to share those links. I'm very afraid to find out my footprint, but I really need to know. So yeah, please send that over. Kay, I'll hand it over to you.
Well, thank you very much. So my thought on this topic is that what's really missing is focus. From my perspective, there is so great a need for so much attention we need so many more people to be aware and contributing. But more than anything, we really need to focus on climate, and because it's so critical right now. If we don't take care of climate, then conservation land doesn't matter a whole lot. And if we don't focus on climate, saltwater intrusion is going to foul our fresh waters. So we really must concentrate on and focus. That's what I think is what we need to do. And I think those of us who care need to put all of our heads together, not just the League of Women Voters trying to save the world, but as many groups as can be brought under an umbrella to share their ideas and coalesce on a plan and execute the plan. That's what I think is missing.
Thank you so much. Dave, I'll hand it over to you.
I was
Yes, there you go.
copying that link. I didn't know I was going to get called on. I think that what we're missing is this intergenerational conversation that's going on right now. Because people are in their cubicles. We aren't hearing from the press, as we should, about the problem. But when we do, it's so negative. I think what we need is an emphasis on solutions, that we need the press to start not talking about how bad it's going to be when we do everything wrong, but how great it's going to be if we do everything right. We can take a lesson from what just happened, from the COVID event. It's all negative, negative, negative. People turned off to it. But as soon as shots started going into arms, people started paying attention again. As soon as we could say to people, if you get a shot, you're safer than you were before, wear your mask still, but go get your shot. Then this light bulb went on over people's heads. They said, wow, we can solve this problem. And we've got to have the same attitude towards climate change. This is a solvable problem. The issue is that all of us, and probably all the people who are watching, jumped from awareness to advocacy. We became aware that there was a problem, and we immediately went out and started pounding the pavement and being advocates. Most people don't do that. Most people go through a step-by-step process. They go from awareness to interest. Once they're interested, then they will take a little action. Then that action has to be reinforced. So they buy a Prius and people in the neighborhood say, oh, you got a Prius, that's great. Then after they take that action, they need another and another. And finally they become, we might call them adopters. And once they're adopters, then they get lots of reinforcement from the community, as we all have from our peers. And then they become advocates. So that process of going from just having heard of the problem, awareness, all the way to advocacy has to be a step-by-step process. And we get frustrated because we think people should be like me. They should immediately, as soon as they hear there's a problem, they should become advocates. People don't change that way. They change step by step. So our program at Green Actioneers is giving them those steps so that they can go step by step from awareness to advocacy. And unless you go up those steps, you're not committed to the outcome. And that's so obvious when people become partly into something and then it melts away really quickly because they haven't taken the steps. So let's learn what those steps are and help people to go step by step up those steps from awareness to advocacy. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Frances.
I think a lot of what we need to do is similar to what Dave was talking about, and bring more people into the climate movement in different ways. If you look at the data that the Yale Center for Climate Communications has been doing, they do polling periodically. The number of Americans who are what they call either concerned or alarmed keeps growing and growing as the number who are dismissive about climate change shrinks. So that now over half of the US population is either concerned or alarmed about climate change. But that doesn't always translate into action. If you look at the voters that we work with in the Environmental Voter Project, people tend to think of environmentalists as being rich white people, and or at least middle-class white people. There certainly are a lot of people who fit that. But the voters that we're talking to are either mostly young or women over 50. Those are the two groups age-wise. Also, many more people of color than people tend to think. So that some days our most typical voter to talk with is going to be a Latina grandmother. So getting those people involved, just getting them to the polls, getting them involved in the ways that make sense for them, be it big or small, is really important. And also bringing parts of the movement together that I think a lot of people who are very involved in climate up until at least recently had no idea that they were on the same page, potentially with a bunch of Latina grandmothers, or with other people whose voices haven't been heard as much, but who may have been involved in other ways for a long time. So finding ways to build those bridges and to bring more people in and to find ways to collaborate. Like one of the other things I've been working on is transit in the state of Maryland. And there are people who are interested in that because it's a huge climate solution. There are people who are interested in that because that's the only way that a lot of lower income people can get to a decent job. And there are many, many reasons that may bring us to the same place. And finding those common interests and building those bridges is really important.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Geri.
Thanks, Kristen. I'm not sure there's any real missing components to the sustainability or environmental movement. The movement has evolved over the past years. Now there's organizations that are actually working together to have an impact on climate change, which you didn't see in the past. I have seen since my involvement with many environmental organizations over the past 5-6 years, I've seen a huge change in the way they've become inclusive, the way they've become more equity driven, and the way that they've actually begun working together. There's a huge now real focus with many organizations. Ours is also on being intergenerational, on really having the dialogues with younger people and encouraging that relationship with intergenerational organizations. So that has been really it's evolving. I would say over the next few years it will become much more inclusive. But I think that Kay really hit it when she said that we need to focus on climate. And that's a real key because there are so many issues. The environmental movement has got to stay focused on its job, which is climate change and the environment. Because there's a lot of other issues that are out there that are critical. They're super important. However, if we don't solve climate change, there's no point to trying to solve the gun problem. So we've got to stay focused and let organizations stay in their lane and let people select what they want to do and really work on that. So, and now, this year we've moved from a much more defensive mode to an accountability mode where we've got to hold the administration accountable for the commitments they've made. And I think that's where the organizations now, the sustainability organizations, have got to move. So that's where I think we are. Thanks, Kristen.
Yes, thank you so much. That's a great insight. For question 4, how do you best communicate the need for this work? And kind of going along with this question, how do you have these hard conversations sometimes to get people to care about it? And I'll start with Kay.
Give me the hard question. And I really do think that is the hard question. It's one that I'm grappling with right now, because as we've all just said, the issue of equity and the bridging of the gap between the old white ladies and the Black-skinned and brown-skinned people of the world that need equity in climate. And how do we, as I'm talking from the League of Women Voters, we care deeply. We are old white ladies who do not look like the people we're trying to help. And how do we bridge that gap? We need help bridging that gap. We need somebody to mediate for us. And actually, we're working on that right now. We're trying to find a way to be able to bring sustainable power into the homes of clean power, into the homes of people who need it. Excuse me, I'm so bad with words. Highly efficient buildings. They need those in those low income neighborhoods more than we need them in our plush homes. They need them in affordable housing where their electric bills cost more per square foot because they don't have enough insulation in the buildings. They need help more than we do. And so what we're trying to do is find a way to get into those neighborhoods so that we can offer help. Now that's a real world problem. How do I communicate? Generally speaking, I rabble rouse, I write letters to the editor, I stand on the street corners with signs, I answer questions when they're asked of me. I try to do the best I can to represent the League of Women Voters and get people to get involved with my organization so that we have a higher, louder voice. And so that's what I try to do. Ta-da.
Thank you so much. Dave, I'll hand it over to you.
Well, the way we communicate is a school at a time. And that means the entire school. There are about 100,000 elementary schools in North America, if you include Canada and the US. There are about 40 million families who send kids to those schools. And by the end of the decade, there will have been over 50 million families. Now, that means that in this next decade, the 20s, which is my 80s, we expect that every school in the country will start doing this, or at least most schools. This book is written for everyone. It tells the story of 3 families. One family is 2 moms and 3 adopted kids, and they live downtown, and we don't know why they don't have a dad in the family, but nobody asks. And they're working on everything that they can do as an urban center family in order to go green. The next family is 2 kids, Lakeisha and Jamal, and they live in a big house in the suburbs with a 3-car garage. And they and their parents are going step by step, trying to figure out what it is that they can do in order to reduce their carbon footprint. The third family is the Chen family. They live on a little farm on the edge of town. And the Chen family has Ken and Mike, and the grandparents live with them too. And they raise fish. They have an aquaponics operation. They bring vegetables to the school, so that everybody in the school gets to buy the vegetables from the Chen family. We just discovered that there's a 4th girl in this classroom that we didn't know about. Her name is Awinita. Everybody called her Anita, but we have to add her to the book because Awinita is a Native American. And her name means little fawn. And Awinita takes the other kids who've been working diligently on learning to go green, and she takes them to her community, which is a sub-community of the city. And it's been there since people started immigrating from other countries and other parts of this country into their town. And they have maintained strictly their not only sustainability, but going beyond sustainability. They reinforce and enrich the soil. They plant trees. They have a philosophy that they have to prepare for the 7th generation, not just for this one or the next one, but for the 7th generation. So they've been working hard on this ever since all these immigrants started coming into this area about 200 years ago. And they have a community along a stream on the northern boundary of town that people don't even know about because they've kept it quiet. They don't want anybody to take any photographs. They just want it to be known that they have this renewable community that's creating a better life than they found in the last generation. So that's the book. And I think the book's going to be really inspiring. I think there's going to be a lot of kids who go, Mom, I think we ought to be like Ajuanita. So that's our goal, is to get the book out into and as many schools as possible this decade. So there's 100,000 schools, 40 million families. It's a lot of books.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Francis.
I think the most important thing, and frequently the hardest thing for us, is to listen. When we're talking with people, to get an idea of what their values are, where they're coming from, what their interests and problems are, so that we can really start to figure out how to communicate. Can we put things in terms that will resonate with them, and also to find common ground with them, and to find ways that we can work together on things. And that frequently is very challenging, because we frequently either want to tell people everything we know and what they should do and so on and so forth, or we have a disagreement with someone and we get kind of triggered by that, and a lot of stereotypes and biases come up that make it very difficult, because right now we're at a very polarized time. But if you really listen, and listen to kind of unexpected people, one of my role models for this is Dr. Catherine Hayhoe, who many of you probably know. She's a climate scientist and an evangelical Christian, and an absolute master at communicating with people from all sorts of different backgrounds and finding common ground. So I think we all have a lot that we can learn in that.
Absolutely. I think that's really important, and a key step to this process is listening and learning for everybody. Geri.
Thanks, Kristen. Yeah, I'd like to reiterate what Francis just said. It's that it's so important to listen and understand values before starting to try and communicate about the climate crisis. I do this by example, and it really depends on who I'm talking to, how I can make it personal. I make it personal from me by talking about the changes I've seen in my lifetime, and tell them my story, and also to make it personal to the geographic area where the audience is from, if it's one person or a big audience. For instance, if I'm talking to people in Florida, we'll talk about how hurricanes are more intense and more frequent, about sea level rise and sunny day flooding. Sunny day flooding has only been an issue wasn't an issue at all 30 years ago. There was no such thing. And people kind of, when you say that and you ask them to remember back 30 years, do you remember this? And they look at you and they kind of scratch their head and say, no, there must be something there. So when people can really relate on a personal level, they can feel that urgency. There's no point in talking about polar bears to people in Arizona or Florida. You have to communicate at a real level. So listening and then communicating really carefully based on where you are and who you're talking to. And that will help, and listen to them about what they feel about the changes in the climate and how did that happen. So yeah, that's how I communicate with people. Thanks, Kristen.
Great, thank you so much. And Jeff.
Well, I thought I was going to have a good conclusion, and Geri hit up many of my topics that I was going to hit on. But best communicate the need for this work. Well, we've heard many different, 5 different people here talking about different things they're doing. And I've learned that it's so, everybody, whatever anybody wants to do, we're all many of us are volunteers. Whatever we want to do to help work for the climate and work for these issues is good. And all we can do is help educate each other and really to make us more effective through education and so forth. We do presentations and festivals and outdoor events, emails, sign-on letters, and we've got partners in all kinds of organizations, 2 of which are represented here. And we educate the youth, the elders, the legislators, fellow citizens, sharing our stories. When I get somebody that doesn't want to listen or is thinking their own things and so forth, I bring it back home and how climate change is or has affected their lives and will affect their children's lives. I remember back the snowstorms in upstate New York in the 60s and 70s. I mean, you build a fort in snow banks that were so big. That doesn't happen so much anymore. And the kids' experiences will be different. And we need to preserve the best for our climate, the variability in the temperatures in the summers where they weren't so oppressive and you could continue to work in the hay fields or do whatever you do. And when I give presentations all the time to different groups, and the first slide I point out is, okay, most of you probably go to Florida for your vacations and some spring breaks and so forth. And it's a picture of Florida, the state of Florida, and what the coastline, the ocean coastline will look like at 2080 if we continue on this path. And you're not going to have the Keys. You're not going to have the same Everglades. You're not going to have the winter vacations, and the city of Miami has to deal with all these things. And other states all across the country are going to have similar, maybe not as disastrous as Florida faces, but they all can relate. And I start with that. Don't argue about the science. The science isn't necessary anymore because we're seeing it. So that's my argument, and I hope it's effective.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. So we're going to go ahead and do our closing question now. So what is something that encourages you about this movement? And what is the best way for someone to get involved with your organization in the future? And so we're going to go ahead and give you guys your closing slides as well. So go ahead, Dave.
Hey, that looks like me. Well, you can start a Green Actioneers program in the school where you live. The first thing you have to do is get a copy of the Green Actioneers workbook, either in draft or wait until the fall, and then get the one that has Awanita and her family in there as well. And then you can help us by joining up. Send me an email, davefinnegan@greenactioneers.com, and we have lots of things for people to do. So far, I've had help from over 60 interns from UCF who have helped me to find the topics and define the topics and load the book and load the website with answers. So we're always looking for people to pull an oar. So if you are interested in that, then you can help us to develop our website. Or if you are good in front of people and you like to get up and talk to kids or kids and grown-ups, you can become a presenter of the Green Actioneers program. And as soon as it starts in the fall, then you can take training. I'll be doing something. I think it's going to be called Sunday Nights at 7. And every Sunday night, I'm going to be in my studio and I'll be presenting, here's how you run the program. And I'll do about an hour. And then people will know what they have to do. And then we'll open it up for questions. And it'll be on Zoom. And folks will be able to join in. And that's what is going to drive this program, is Sunday Nights at 7. And then all over the country, we're going to have schools that are starting the program. And then there are other things that could happen as a result of that. One is this book is great fodder for a TV series, a kids TV series, sort of a Magic School Bus meets Captain Planet kind of thing, where if somebody had that kind of ability, let's do it. Let's make a TV series that's on, it would be a streaming video series. So that's something people could help us with. So there's a list, lots of things that you could do, but the best thing to do is get in touch with me, Dave Finnegan at greenactioneers.com, and let's start talking. And we can use your help. This is not a foundation. This is just a personal project of mine. Every penny that's gone into this project has come from my pocket. And so this is just something that I'm doing. And it requires a lot of folks to chip in and help out. I'm not going to ask for your money. I'm going to ask for your time. Thanks a lot. I'm Dave Finnegan, Green Actioneers.
Thank you so much, Dave. Francis.
Hi, I'm gonna let Geri tell you about Elders Climate Action and how to get involved with ECA. I don't want to take that part. But you don't have to be an elder to get involved in a lot of great groups. There are a huge number of groups, from the very small, like maybe the Green Team, and you want to start in your church, to things that are national. If you want to get involved in the Environmental Voter Project, simple, go to the website, www.environmentalvoter.org. You can start really small, like you can pledge to vote in every election, or you can become involved in doing voter outreach and learn more about problems that we're facing with voters. And although it's not something that EVP is doing, it's springtime, the pandemic's winding down, and I'd encourage everybody to find some ways to get outside and do things safely with other people, whether it's going to a rally, planting a tree. The possibilities are really endless. It's a good time for us to get away from our computers for a while, so when we get closer to the big elections, we'll be willing to sit down and send a bunch of texts.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Francis. Geri.
Thanks, Kristen. So what can you do? Well, certainly learn a lot more about climate change and the impacts and how history has evolved and how we got where we are. Powerful is talking to family and friends about climate change. And there are over 80 million elders in this country, and we're creating a movement of elders and we'll amplify that voice. So of the 80 million elders, please join Elders Climate Action. I'll drop the website into the chat. There may be an ECA chapter near you. If you're in Florida, there are two pieces of a chapter, a North Florida chapter and a South Florida chapter, both a little different from each other. And not everybody that's engaged with Elders Climate Action is an elder. We've got some very active elders in a couple of our chapters. One has a 25 or 30-year-old as a member because they feel like that's doing the work that they want to do. It's important to learn about state and local government and educate your legislators and representatives. That's really key. And go to our website, find some actions. We've got many actions that people can take, and we are changing those on a continuum. And we encourage people to step up and become a more active volunteer. Francis and Jeff and I are all volunteers, and we're always needing people who can help with social media, with grant writing, with fundraising, with program development, you name it, we could use the support. So I encourage you to go to our website, look around, and I hope to meet some of you soon. And I just want to close by saying that when I look into my grandchildren's eyes, I really want to be able to tell them that I'm doing everything I can to leave them with a habitable planet. Thanks, Kristen.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Geri. Jeff.
Well, we've covered Elders Climate Action has mainly two components. One is education, educating elders, youth, legislators. I wanted to talk about a little bit about advocacy and what we try to do at state, local, and federal levels, and some key tips for anybody that's trying to do this. And I think when you try to talk to anybody, just be sure of your information first. Know the science. I always go back to the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. In fact, when I joined the Elders Climate, that was the first document I went to try to understand the science behind what was happening. And there's a wealth of information. The executive summary gives all the details. So understand that. And then understand your legislative session in your state. How bills progress, know the legislative cycle, start to finish, how a bill moves through your state, first reading, in committee, second readings, third readings, then to the other chamber. And first of all, mainly know who they are. Everybody who's going to be active in fighting for the climate should know their state senator and their state representative, and you should have them on your email address. And you should, I'm in S24 and House 40, and it automatically comes up, and I send emails on watch the bills that are important to you. So you understand the session and advocate when you can. Develop teams within your district and state. In a perfect world, we've got 50 state Senate districts here where I live, and we'd have a team in each one, so we knew we were making a difference influencing those legislators. But do the best you can. Get teams of people that educate voters, both and educating the electorate so that they can influence things and influence legislation. Know and develop a good relationship with your legislator. That's important to get credibility and get a relationship where you can go in and talk to those folks, regardless of party. We go after the policies. We don't try to support one candidate. As Elders Climate Action, we can't support one candidate or another. We go for policy and try to influence them all on the policies that are pro-climate and pro-environment. Individually, you can go and talk other, you can be partisan, but in your organization, that's particularly if it's a 501c3, we don't advocate for one legislator or another. You have to be careful with that when you're out advocating. And educate your citizens all year long. We've got plans to educate after the legislative sessions ends, meeting with people, even going to outdoor markets and having a table where we can present material and be professional. And all key things that I hope help everybody be as effective as we can. We work at it, and everybody should work at it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jeff. And we'll close with Kay.
Well, let me see what I had to say here. Well, one thing with the question I was answering primarily here was what do I feel encouraged about? And I do have something I feel encouraged about, and that is that we seem to have found our voices. There have been a contingency of environmentalists in our cities and in our culture for a very long time. It's like jousting with windmills. We have not been making a lot of progress, but it feels like now we have the wind beneath our wings and we are starting to climb. We're starting to make real progress. And it feels like we have the majority of Americans who are willing to say that they care about climate change. And I think that is something exciting. I feel like it's an opportunity and that we should grasp that opportunity and be efficient about making progress while we can, because as we've seen, progress can be rolled back. So we need to make as much progress as we can right now, so that we have farther to go when we're going to start rolling back. And so what can we do? We can vote in every single election. We can encourage everybody we know to vote in every single, to become campaigners for issues, and to work with candidates who care about our issues and who have a track record of working for our issues. And if there isn't one, if there isn't a candidate, be that candidate. Take bold action and be the candidate who will make a difference. It can happen and they can win. So you can win if you want to be. I would say this to young people: go for it. We need your leadership. We definitely need the leadership of young people. And if you're in an organization, find a way to work with other organizations that have your same mission in mind, and not really working at cross purposes, but not having the exact same goals, and not putting all of our energy into accomplishing a single goal, where that single goal can be accomplished. Where if you have two separate goals and people who have the same heart for the issue, but two different goals, maybe they won't make any difference at all. But if they put all their effort towards a single goal, they can make a difference that way. I would suggest joining the League of Women Voters. That I've put the URL in my page right there, lwvoc.org. I was saying earlier, we are the largest or second largest chapter in the country. That gives us a lot of clout. And the League of Women Voters is working on the climate crisis across the country. The more people we have in the League of Women Voters, the stronger voice we have. And that's true for all organizations. And I am going to check out Elders Climate Action Org. I would ask that you check out the League of Women Voters. And then I believe in being the squeaky wheel. I believe in writing. I believe in writing to letters to the editor, and getting attention wherever you can, however you can, as long as it's polite and knowledgeable and you're not spreading lies. Spread the truth and spread it loudly. And also, this is a wonderful opportunity, Kristen. Thank you so much for bringing us elders into the fold. I think that young people and old people, I don't like to do that, but I think more people is what we need, more people working together. And I particularly like young people. And so I say mentor young people and get them with the ground beneath their feet, so that they have the opportunity to care and to find their voice.
Amazing.
There you go.
Thank you so much, Kay. And thank you everybody for being a part of this panel. I know I learned so much, and I know that our audience did as well, gained a lot of wisdom and insight and inspiration. I know I'm ready to go and be the squeaky wheel and learn a lot along the way. So thank you guys so much for your time today. Thanks for everybody who joined us for this panel. And keep at it, keep up the good work, and we'll protect our planet together. So thank you everybody, and have a good night.